Shakira in Mexico in 2025 was definitely a unicorn. A lot of things probably went into combining her connection throughout her career with the Mexican people, how kind of like her personal situation made her write all of those songs, how that connected with Mexican women, Mexicans in general, and then just adding the live music component and how everything was very stable, I think gave fruit to it was 12 nights at Estadio GNP Seguros, but it was also another 17 dates in other cities in Mexico.
We have the Globalization of Latin Touring presented by Live Nation. We will have Anuel and DJ Khaled after this, so don't leave after this. Okay, we have a great panel. I'm so excited to be here with, I'm in great company, by the way. Jorge Garcia, Global Tour Promoter, Live Nation. Leizer Guss, Director of Festivals at OCESA. Mac Clark, Agent at CAA. So this will be mainly in English. If you do need translation to Spanish, I know we have some of that available. And we do want to thank Live Nation for presenting this conversation. It's a very timely conversation, but I do want to start with a little icebreaker. What's the concert that made you fall in love with live music and truly appreciate the production side of it?
Oh, wow. My first job in the US when I migrated was selling those glow sticks at festivals.
No way.
So the one time that there was a Siempre en Domingo festival in Chicago and I was selling those things, and I would look at the stage and Alejandra Guzman is performing, and then she would end and they were setting up for, I don't know, Emmanuel or somebody else, and seeing the fast-paced action on stage, moving stuff around, and the stage manager with the clipboard and the thing, I was blown away. I was like, I want to be a part of that. Whatever that is, I just want to do that.
Yeah, okay. What about you, Leizer?
I mean, my first concert was The Strokes in a very small room when I was like 14. I didn't really know what it entailed, but I think that was the moment when I wanted to like work in music.
Yeah. Was there anything specific that you remember?
Not too much, just...
Okay, bueno, fair. What about you, Mac?
My first concert was supposed to be Miles Davis at Jones Beach, and it was so long ago that when we got there, we found out the show had been canceled. And so my mom brought me home. He died a week later, so I never got to see him. So my first concert ended up being Aerosmith, also at Jones Beach a few months later. Yeah, and now I work with them, so it's a little weird.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I do want to start by asking, I feel like we use the word global so casual nowadays that it gets, used for almost everything. Global artists, Latin music goes global. What does the word global mean in touring, and specifically the areas that you all work in?
I mean, after Bad Bunny, it really means global.
Yeah.
Look, there's markets. Every artist should be thinking globally because everybody has a shot nowadays. So you have artists that are emerging in LA or emerging in Guadalajara, and the barriers have been broken. Now you have, Peso Pluma selling out 10,000 tickets in Madrid, right? And Bad Bunny selling 10 stadiums over there, or 2 stadiums in Sydney, Australia. I mean, it really means global nowadays.
So global means going to another country?
Going to territories that you wouldn't have imagined when you were growing up.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we saw, although Europe has been developing as a touring marketplace for Latin artists for several years, is one of the interesting things that I was witnessing earlier this year with Fade was as he was going through all these places like Stockholm and Denmark and all these smaller countries in Europe, and every night he would ask where people were from. And you would find out there were Chileans in Stockholm and Argentinians in Denmark, and why they got there and the history of how they ended up there in these communities that are there. To Jorge's point about Australia, you know, Japan has been a market that traditionally has been tough for a lot of genres, not just Latin, but hip hop as well, right? Really rock and pop have always dominated the landscape in Asia. But in Japan this year as well with Fade, after I think 5 years, we were able to get him to curate the first Latin stage at Summer Sonic, which is their version of Coachella. And so that was a groundbreaking moment. And I think we continue to look at these opportunities to push boundaries and open up new global areas.
Y para ti, Leizer, global, ¿qué significa trabajando en México?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, without discrediting what they said, they work on a global level, I work on a local level, and at least for a promoter in a local market, global, I think, means an artist that is recognized beyond like the local market, which, I don't know, we book something like 15 festivals in OCESA, and when we're discussing like billing or who we should book, there is a special like tab we put on global artists that we don't for local, even if the local artists sometimes sell more than the global. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah. And Jorge, you mentioned every artist should be thinking global, and maybe this is something, Mac, you can also touch on. But if I'm a new artist, should I be thinking global? Or does that come later in an artist's career?
I mean, I think you have to put it in your brain, right? If you're an artist, your potential could be that big. So you just continue to make your art, you know, perfect your craft. The opportunities are gonna be there. Create the right connections, and maybe you can get global, which 10 years ago, it wasn't really a possibility that you could feel, right? That you can aspire to, maybe a dream. Now it's not just a dream. If you could put the right strategy behind, you could probably get there.
Okay. Mac, do you want to add anything?
I mean, I think a big part of it is there are artists that are, you know, stadium level artists in the United States, in Central and South America, as they're beginning to develop these other markets. We collectively have to work to convince them as to why they should be taking 5 steps back to take 2 steps forward, right? And that it is really a 3, 5, 10-year plan to be able to break these markets. You know, when you think of the comment Jorge just made about what Live Nation's done with Bad Bunny in Australia, the idea that a Latin artist could go and sell 2 stadiums in Australia, really until 18 months ago, was not even a sure thing, right? And even selling 1 was not a sure thing. But it took many years of laying the groundwork, you know, and there having been other artists that have gone there in smaller capacities. So you have to go to these markets, you have to invest in them, you have to make a lot less money. In a lot of circumstances, you lose money, right? And great partners in Live Nation will help to make it possible for these artists to go and develop in these markets. You know, because financially, it obviously, in today's world, the cost of touring is through the roof. It's no different in Europe.
Okay. For many years, artists, you know, if they wanted to be a global artist, US was like the #1 place to tour, and it probably still is. But there are other new markets, Europe, Asia, that Bad Bunny is doing. But even Latin America has become a key destination for artists. Why is that important today? That Latin America has now this global, you know, platform.
Well, more and more you're gonna see that there's more infrastructure in the Latin American countries. Central America is going through a redevelopment, right? The stadiums, There's going to be new venues built. For example, Live Nation just took over the Luna Park Arena in Buenos Aires. There's a whole renovation being planned. And that kind of development is going to happen more and more in the markets that make sense. El Salvador, Guatemala, Peru, Chile.
Okay. Leizer, what happened in Latin America? Obviously, you work in Mexico, that's your base. Why do you think it took kind of long for it to catch up?
I mean, I think it's a two-way street. I think Latin America, or at least specifically Mexico, has always had the best fans in the world. I think it was just a matter of maturing live music business, like having the artists pay more attention to Latin America, having infrastructure, like Jorge mentioned, and I think the pandemic sped things up and just made everything bigger, larger, faster.
Okay. And I think a lot of people here would appreciate if we break down how an artist can enter these markets, right? And how do you promote that? Because it's not a one-size-fits-all. Latin music is so diverse. How do you help these global audiences understand that diversity that is Latin music?
I think, I mean, it's each artist has its own story, each genre. I think Latin is not a sound, and I think I've heard that in Live Nation before. Even if there are some similarities, I mean, the difference between even Peso Pluma and Bad Bunny are huge, no? So I think you just have to consume and explore each genre or each artist as its own and discover its world and enjoy its art.
Yeah. Okay. Mac, how has that shift impacted, and you both also can chime in, but how has that new markets becoming available shifted the impact the way you plan a tour route today?
I mean, I would say that Mexico has become the most important market, I think, from a streaming perspective and from a sales perspective of building an artist. It speaks to the US, but it also pushes down into Central and Latin America. And I think if you can achieve success in Mexico, you're going to see a much broader success both throughout the US and certainly into Latin America. So it really is a place that we focus on probably primarily as where we think about a starting place and where we'll see traction, and it will give us guidance on how big we can go in certain other places. The other part of it is that we were just touching on is not every genre works in every market. For example, reggaeton and regional Mexican have a very tough time in Brazil because it's not the local language, right? So that market is still in development, whereas Argentina really lives up to the size and hype of the urban artist, right? And it does well in that marketplace, as does Colombia. Some of the other markets are still coming along, but we all look at Mexico to be really the guiding light as to how successful someone can be, and it'll help us set the parameters on what size venue should we go in. Should we be in a theater? Should we be in an arena? What's the data telling us coming out of Mexico? It really sets the tone. I think it's the most important market there is for the music right now.
And when did that happen, that it became the most important market?
Pardon?
When did it happen? When did you notice that?
I mean, I think probably over the last 5 years, as the streaming platforms have begun to share more data, as we've been able to pull more data off of YouTube, off of socials like Instagram and Spotify, right? That started to give us this, wait a second, it's all happening here, and this is a massive population. There's probably, more festivals in Mexico, like per capita, than anywhere else in the world. And, when you think about OCESA is the second largest, third largest promoter in the world within one country. That gives you an idea of how important that marketplace is.
Okay. At least here in the US, and I would love to know, Leizer, your perspective of it, but it does feel like there is an oversaturation of concerts, tours here in the US. There's so much traffic with arenas and stadiums. Why do you guys think that is? And Leizer, is that the same thing that's happening in Mexico, where it's just almost oversaturated?
Yes, I mean, it probably took a little longer to either show or for us to feel it, but we're definitely in an oversaturated market. Shows, it's probably something like 6 months or even less. It's recent, but it's there. As to why, I think it's as simple as people have a limited amount of income and they just have to choose where they use their money. And I think, again, coming out of the pandemic, there was this angst of like, I want to live, I want to enjoy, I want to go out, I want to have fun. As the years go by and people don't die, they get to choose what to do with their money.
Right.
But I think the visibility of the oversaturation is just happening now. But before a lot of this, let's call it Mexican music, jumped from the small clubs, the small independent clubs, into the theaters and the arenas and the amphitheaters and the stadiums, there was already a saturation. We just weren't paying attention because they were so spread out in smaller clubs and independent clubs. You wouldn't see it. Now you see it because now you see, for example, Peso Pluma and Fuerza Regida playing Dallas last year on the same night, and both sold out, by the way.
Do you think that also contributed why there's so many new markets as well? Why? Because now artists are also seeing that there is this traffic and saturation, so now they're seeing that there's more opportunity in other markets.
So the fans are there. Their fans are there in Ohio and Idaho and everywhere. We just got to continue to explore at what level we take this artists to those markets.
Yeah.
But the fans are there. So that's why there's going to be more shows, because the fans are there.
Okay. Well, Shakira, speaking of more shows, Shakira just broke a record at GNP Seguros with 12 dates. That's the first time that's ever happened, si no me equivoco. What does that say about the market in Mexico? And can you take me behind the scenes of what you were even thinking?
Yeah, so I mean, Shakira in Mexico in 2025 was definitely a unicorn. A lot of things probably went into combining her connection throughout her career with the Mexican people, how her personal situation made her write all of those songs, how that connected with Mexican women, Mexicans in general. And then just adding the live music component and how everything was very stable, I think gave fruit to it was 12 nights at Estadio GNP Seguros, but it was also another 17 dates in other cities in Mexico. Never had an artist, even, I would dare to say, even like 1/3 of that. So yeah, it was special. It was just, there was this comment in Mexico for a while that every day it rains and every day there's a Shakira show.
It felt that way.
It felt like that. So yeah, I mean, it was magical. For it to happen again, I think a lot of things would have to combine again, and I think the artist would have to pay attention to Mexico as much as she did in a year.
Okay. And I also think it's important to talk about if this global touring that we're seeing can also help local artists and that local market, where it's not just artists coming in, but we're also seeing development in that specific market.
100%. 100%. You have talent everywhere. It just needs to be either discovered, developed, worked on. But you have talent everywhere.
And it's not just, I think that's important to note, but it's not just Latin artists who are going to tour Latin America. I think Kendrick now is doing Mexico, but there's other non-Latin international artists wanting to go. Was that something always there, or?
I mean, I think we, with The Weeknd, who's been rolling out a global stadium tour, right? When we wanted to tell the story of how to launch that, that was the show that we did in Brazil. And he could have done 5 nights there. I think we all wanted him to do 5 nights. And he was like, I'm gonna do 1. And he picked Brazil specifically, right? For him, culturally, the message being able to emanate from Latin America to launch a global tour, that's a first for an artist of that size. So I think it shows the importance of how people are viewing it, right? It's always been a big rock community in South America. So, whether it's Red Hot Chili Peppers or Blink-182, more recently, and you see what Coldplay has done, right? So I think it's been really important to see how the Latin artists have begun to build in these markets that have been dominated by other genres in the past. And that is really starting to take hold now.
I definitely want to understand long-term planning and developing an artist in touring, because we do see some cases, not all, where Peso Pluma, his breakout year, he had massive tours. He went to Europe, and that was his first year. So how does that contribute to artist development? Is that, obviously it's not a case for every artist that's just starting. So what does that say about artist development?
Yeah, I mean, Peso is, I think, one of a kind, once in a generation type of artist, right? Who not only touched people musically, but touched them culturally. Who he was, who he is, who his, what his persona is, I think is just as important as the music that he's making. And those two things combined created this mass explosion for him, right? And so there was a huge acceleration for him from theaters into arenas. That being said, you still have to be very, very thoughtful about the markets that you're playing in, how you're pricing tickets. You have to allow your fans to catch up to the speed of growth, right? So it's very difficult to 1 year prior have your tickets be $40, the following year have them be $150 and lose some people in between. So you have to continue to make the growth accessible to people, right? Because as he was growing as fast as he was, you're still bringing people in, right? You're still having to show the Coachellas of the world why someone like him can come in and be the first of his kind to perform in the slot that he did. He was the highest Mexican Latin artist to debut in a slot that size at Coachella. And he didn't sing one song in English. Similarly, we had him perform at Rolling Loud, which is a straight-ahead urban festival, which has always been completely, English speaking. And so there was a risk on both sides of one, convincing Rolling Loud to do it, and 2, convincing him that he was going to go in there and do his performance, which includes violins, which includes bass, which includes guitars and all these things that you would never see at Rolling Loud, right? But he has that cultural attaché that really no other artist has. And he was able to walk in there and you've got 50,000 people chanting his name. And again, he didn't do one song in English, right? Now, he had features come out from the hip hop community, but he is a groundbreaking artist. And you continue to do things and take risks like Rolling Loud because it continues to open up the marketplace to bring other people in who normally wouldn't have gone to a concert. So we're continually looking at those opportunities. He's a complex con. That's another thing to bring people in, right, and understand who the artist is. So we're constantly looking at these strategic places to help build them.
Yeah. So these are very particular cases. Someone like Peso Pluma, but still the focus is always trying to do artist development and taking steps.
I would say, because we have something happening right now in this moment, which is young Miko, similarly, an artist, we've had perform on Governor's Ball and Lollapalooza this year, which are generally, again, straight ahead Anglo festivals, she's out supporting Billie Eilish right now. And one of the things that we talked about before that was she was like, is this what I should do? And I was like, you have an album coming out. You have to break the Anglo market. Look at what, supporting Taylor Swift did for Sabrina Carpenter and Gracie Abrams. So the idea behind finding strategic opportunities is not specific in that way, is that we're looking at those ways to break people constantly and finding the right opportunities. For her, it happened to be supporting Billie, which, everybody would want to do. So that's happening right now. That's a great moment, for her as well.
Okay, great. Well, we have 20 seconds left. But I did want to ask just a final question. Any touring trends or data that's recently made you pivot in a project?
Yeah, you go on sale, you sell out, you roll the second night, or move
shows.
it to a bigger show, or continue to add until you get to, 10 stadiums in Madrid, or Karol G 4 stadiums in Madrid.
O
Don't
12
stop.
en México, como Shakira.
It was 5 and then 3 and then it wasn't 12 in a row. Like it wasn't 12 de un bocado.
Ajá, sí. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This went by so
Thank you.
fast. Thank you.